Welcome for yet another session in strategic management. Today we're going to look at the choices that organizations make. Remember, we've gone through quite a number of stages, and let us try to reflect on what we've been able to cover in the past days. I remember we looked at the introduction to strategy development, where we covered the likes of what's the strategy. Then we combined strategic management, where we looked at generally why organizations go into strategic management and why it is important. And we also said that it is top management that is responsible for the formulation of the strategy, and we looked at the vision of an organization, why they are important, why it is important for organizations to dream, and things of that nature. We went ahead to look at the external environment to the organization, and we said that it is very important for organizations to examine the factors in their external environment, that is the politics, economy, social, technology, and legal. How they carry out an examination of those by scanning the environment, and we said that we can either go scanning using qualitative methods or quantitative methods. And we said that when we go using qualitative methods as we're scanning our environment, well, we use what we call guesses, opinions, judgments, among others, and we looked at things like using executives, sales team, customer evaluations, surveys, and things of that nature. That way we are scanning the external environment to identify if we can get any opportunities or if there are any threats. We still said that we can use quantitative methods, which are more statistical in nature, like time series, regression, econometrics, and things of that nature. However, after scanning the external environment to the organization to see what is there for the organization to profit, we said that we can also now go closer to the organization, that is in the industry, and competitive analysis. What was important in the industry? Number one, we said that we need to understand what an industry is that we belong to. Remember, an industry is a collection of companies dealing in similar goods and services and satisfying similar customer needs. That is an industry. And we said that when we are studying the industry, there are quite a number of things that we need to understand. Number one, we said we need to understand the boundaries of an industry. How much can we stretch? Who are the customers of the industry? What do they need? Because if you do not have a satisfied customer, you are likely to be kicked out of business. So we looked at the industry and competitive analysis, starting by identifying the boundaries of the industry. We looked at the industry life cycle, because we need to know the stage at which the industry is, then we know what kind of effort that we can put in. We said that if we are in introduction, we know what is happening there. If we're in growth, we know how many players are there, what kind of competition is likely to be, and things of that nature. Then we also talked about the industry structure. How many players are in an industry? Who is the industrial leader? What kind of competitive advantage do they have, and things of that nature. We say that we also need to understand the 5 forces of competition according to Michael Porter. And in the industry and life cycle and the competitive analysis, we said that it is important to look at the key success factors. What must you have to survive in a particular industry? And then after that, we looked at the internal environment of an organization, where we said that here we come direct within the organization to identify where we are strong and where we are weak. Things that we talked about in the organization within, we looked at the human resources, the marketing capability, distribution capability. We looked at the research and development. We looked at the capital resource. We looked at things like building and equipment, the product, and things of that nature. All of those ones can either give you a strength or a weakness, depending on how you manage them. In other words, when we finish looking at the internal environment, that means we have what we call a complete SWOT analysis. We know what is there to exploit, we know what is there to safeguard ourselves against, because those ones come from the industry and the external environment. Then we also know what our capabilities are by looking at our strength and our weaknesses. That means that we can make the right choices out there as we will see what happens. When we come to the strategic alternatives, call them choices. The strategic alternatives are developed to set direction in which the available resources of a firm will be applied for greater chances of achieving the selected goals. Remember, we now know what our organizational capabilities are. In as much as there might be choices out there in the environment for the organization to tap in, we've identified our boundaries of the industry. We know how many players are. We know the stage at which the industry is. We know what needs to be given continuous management attention. Now we can apply our resources rightfully as we might move. When we look at the firm's development, the firms develop strategies at different levels or layers of an organization, at top management, middle management, and functional management. Remember, in strategic management, our major interest is at top management because that is where strategy is formulated. So our interest is to look at the corporate strategy. What happens here? Corporate level strategy is the set of strategic alternatives from which an organization chooses as it manages its operations simultaneously. Take note of that. Across several industries and several markets. Companies today compete in a variety of industries and markets. I'll give you an example. If Coca-Cola is an international company, one, it is competing world over. That is in the same industry, but different markets. Different markets have different needs. That is why it will go an extra mile to introduce different brands. And when they introduce these different brands, they're expanding on their presence, but at the same time they are going into different markets, because when they introduce water, they face different competitors. When they introduce juice, they are facing different competitors. However, so as they develop business level strategies for each industry or market, they also develop an overall strategy that helps them to cope in the different industries that they are surviving in. So at the corporate level, we have five categories of strategies. We can pursue stable growth, we can pursue growth, harvesting, defensive, and combination. However, let us take note of this. Our major interest is going to be on growth and defensive because they are very, very important. However, let us look at what happens when an organization chooses to pursue stable growth. Here, this is adopted when a firm's management may not wish to make any significant modifications, or at present. This happens when an organization is making profits, or if an organization is not exposed to lots of competition. When you look at government agencies like Umeme, like National Water, they are more stable. They are more pursuing stable growth. You don't see them doing aggressive advertisements. You don't see them doing lots of campaign because they are enjoying. They are more social in the making. They are government agencies, and they are not supposed to be making profits per se. So they are not really in competition, and those ones are likely to be pursuing a little bit of more stable growth. However, what happens if we find out that an organization is pursuing growth? They are generally associated with growing industries. Take note. So find out which stage your company is. Are they introduction? Are they maturity? If they are growing, then this is the strategy for your company. And what happens here? Characteristics of this growing or the growth strategy are as follows. Number one, here the firms are striving to grow faster than the markets in which their products are being sold. That means there is a likelihood of aggressive competition. There is a likelihood of lots of campaigns here and there, because firms are striving to grow faster because they are looking at getting or achieving what we call a competitive advantage. Here, still, they tend to be making profits that are higher than the industry's average. We normally say that when an industry is in growth, there is what we call abnormal profitability, or the profits are abnormal, and I think you can see that is one of the things that are happening here. So when an industry is in growth, we normally think and believe that it is important to pursue this kind of strategy. As we continue, we realize that still under growth strategy, The companies which are likely to be pursuing growth normally come up with new innovations in terms of products, in terms of processes and markets and things of that nature. What happens when an organization chooses to pursue growth as for the strategy? Here we have what we call the generics for pursuing growth strategy, or generic strategies for growth, in whichever way you might look at it. Here, a company might choose to concentrate. One, a company might choose to do what we call vertical integration, or a company might choose to do what we call diversification. What happens when a company chooses to concentrate? They can either choose to concentrate on increasing their sales, increasing the market share, increasing the profitability. Here, a concentration strategy largely focuses on a single product or service, or on a small number of related products or services. Firms are enabled to, by certain gaps, to adopt a concentration. If an organization finds that there is a product line gap, lack of a full product line relevant to the market, and then that means that you can choose to concentrate on that. Distribution gap, if there are some areas which are not distributed to, an organization can choose to satisfy that area which is not distributed to. Usage gap, if there is less knowledge about the product, an organization can choose to create knowledge awareness about a particular product, and then they exploit the gap. And then competitive gap, as you will see. Those are the areas, the gaps that enable organizations to pursue what we call concentration gap, as you've seen. When we choose to concentrate, there are what we call approaches to concentration strategy. You either do what we call market development. You come up with new markets. To achieve market development, consideration effort is directed towards expanding the markets of the current business or products. Here, by either gaining a larger market share of the current market, expanding into new geographical areas, or attracting new market segments. And furthermore, you can do what we call intensive or extensive advertising activities in different areas, as you will see. We can still choose to concentrate on product development. The main thrust of effort is directed towards modifying the product or service, or at times developing new products that are closely related to the current product. When you look at, I'll give you an example of detergents. When you look at Omo as a detergent, it's one of those that have been in existence for a while, and most of the times you see them coming up with new branding, new packagings, and things of that nature. That way they're looking at product development, and sometimes they also do lots of campaigns. That way they are trying to concentrate using product development. The same thing has been done by Colgate. They come up with Colgate Charcoal, Colgate Herbal, Colgate for kids, and things of that nature. That is product development. And then we can still concentrate by doing what we call horizontal integration. It occurs when an entrepreneur acquires one or more businesses that produce similar products or services as the firm itself. Typically, it is achieved by buying another firm in the same business, as you will see. Horizontal concentration, horizontal integration is quite wide, and it is being done by quite a number of organizations. Here, I will normally assume that horizontal integration can either be internal growth or external growth, as you will see. And sometimes we normally call it, it can be a merger or an acquisition. I was seeing some people talking about Fresh Dairy, and they were saying that it has been bought off and they've changed the name to Brookside. I want you to go and find out if that was a merger or it was an acquisition, and why it was done. Those who are looking at Fresh Dairy, now Brookside, make sure that you find out what exactly was done between the two companies, if it was a merger or it was an acquisition, and why it was done the way it was done. So we are still in growth. Corporate strategies, we've concentrated, and we said that concentration is quite wide, and we can concentrate on sales, market share, profitability, name it. And we said that there are things that enable an organization to concentrate, and those are gaps. There can be distribution gaps, there can be competitive gaps, there can be gaps in product usage, name it. And we said that when we choose to concentrate, we can either do market development, product development, or horizontal integration. Number 2, we do what we call vertical integration. What is vertical integration? And why do organizations go into vertical integration? When we talk about vertical integration, there are quite a number of things that happen under vertical integration. Normally we say that leave alone area 23, 24, and 25 because they were a skip of what was supposed to happen in the horizontal integration, because it was just a detail in regards to mergers and acquisition. Let us look at the vertical integration. What happens when an organization chooses to vertically integrate? The degree at which a firm owns its upstream suppliers and its downstream buyers. Expansion of activities downstream is referred to as forward integration, and the reverse is true. Vertical integration can be visualized using the value chain. There are 2 factors to consider while vertically integrating. That is the cost and the control element, as you will see. Vertical integration describes a strategy when a firm extends its business either to become its own distributor or it becomes its own supplier. Benefits of vertical integration. It leads to reduced transportation costs, improved supply chain, opportunities to differentiate by means of increasing control over inputs, among others. There are also some drawbacks. There is what we call capacity building. If you do not have the manpower, potentially highly costs due to the control, the decreased flexibility, increased bureaucratic costs, etc. And as you will see. So if you do not concentrate, if you don't vertically integrate, you can do what we call diversification. What is to diversify? Is to change. This is the most risky growth strategy since it requires both a product and market development and may be outside the core competencies of the firm. In fact, this is referred to as, by some people, a suicide sale. However, diversification may be a reasonable choice if the high risk is compensated by the chance of a high return of investment or rate of return. There are quite a number of reasons as to why organizations choose to do diversify. To reduce the risk of reliance on a single product the firm may be currently operating in circulation, a new business may be offering more profits and things of that nature. There are 2 types of diversification. There is what we call concentric diversification and conglomerate diversification. This is when we look at concentric, this is the case when the firm undertakes a new business which is more the same as the current business. When Coca-Cola introduces water or juice or Bushera, that is concentric. Why? Because they are still quenching thirst. I will repeat. When Coca-Cola goes into other businesses which are for still juice, water, they are all quenching thirst. That is concentric. But when an organization goes in a business which is totally different or unrelated to the current business, that is what we call conglomerate. When you look at the likes of Bidco, likes of Mukwano, they are conglomerates because they are doing lots of businesses, but each of the businesses is competing in a different industry. The tea leaves, the cooking oil, the plastics, and things of that nature. In each of their products, they meet new competitors. So that is called conglomerates. And number 3, corporate strategic alternatives. We started by looking at the stable growth. We came to the growth, which was having quite a number of generics. That is concentration, vertical integration, and diversification. And then number 3, we're looking at harvesting strategy. What happens here? This is needed when prospects of the firm or an organization start to decline. This will be because of changes in the market condition, arrival of new competitors, changes in customer tastes and preferences, government policies. It is like a shakeout. Harvesting is like a shakeout. When it happens, these are the things that cause an organization to harvest. And once you realize that there are new competitors, new technologies, changes in people's tastes and preferences, you do what we call need to use a harvesting strategy. Let us go into what we call a defensive. Generally, defensives are short terms, and we've taken note of, highlighted that. They are applied when the firm is having what we call negative negative trends in the situations. I'll give an example. Defensive strategies always involve reducing of operations. Common scenarios necessitating defensives when the company is having serious financial issues, when the company forecasts a bleak future, when the owners see an opportunity to profit substantially by selling part of the company, then we go defensive. There are common defensive strategies. You can do what we call turnaround. Here, this is when an organization is facing a negative financial trend, and to go back to profitability, like organizations have been in COVID, you can reduce on the size and scope of operations in an organization, either lay off some employees, selling part of the buildings and equipment, eliminating some products which are not fetching returns and things of that nature. You can also reduce on the operations. That way you are likely to combat a negative financial trend. Two, you can do what we call divestment. Involves selling part of the business. You can do what we call a liquidate, where this occurs when the entire business is wound up. It can be voluntary or it can be involuntary. We can also file for bankruptcy, where an organization seeks a legal protection, or you become a captive. All of those ones are defensive strategies. And finally, there is what we call a combination strategy, where an organization is dealing in more than one business. That means they cannot use a same strategy. That means they will have to use a combination of strategies at the same time. So we go into what we call combination. So at top management, when we are making choices of what can be picked on, most of our companies that we are using for our case studies are not pursuing stable growth. Most of them, when you look at them, they are doing growth strategies. They are either concentrating on sales, profitability, market share, or they are doing vertical integration, becoming their own suppliers or their own distributors, or they are doing what we call diversification, going into extending their product lines, or going in totally different businesses. And others, when you look at them, if they are not, top management is not choosing to do what we call pursue growth strategies, others are doing defensives. Many companies are filing for bankruptcy, others are doing what we call the turnaround, others are liquidating, as you will see. And that is that as far as the corporate strategies are concerned. At the business unit level, middle management, after we've chosen whatever we choose to go with at top management, we have to go in the implementational stage where we meet the business unit, because they're the ones who make sure that they support our top management. On the other hand, business unit strategies indicate how each business within the firm will compete within the industry to which it belongs. I repeat, on the other hand, the business unit strategies indicate how each business within the firm will compete, because you can be in an organization and you're having various departments, and each department is given autonomy to see how it's going to compete and become a leader in the industry where it is competing with other players. So at business unit, that is what is supposed to be done. At this level, each business unit will compete against other businesses whose products are close substitutes or of the business unit product itself. And according to Michael Porter Steele, at the business unit level, organizations normally choose from quite a number. Number one, they can choose to be an overall cost leader. Here, this is relevant if the business unit can produce and deliver its products or services in the market at the lowest or at a lower cost than the competitors. When you look at the banking sector, there is an overall cost leader, but they are only overall cost leaders in one product, not all the products. So is the telecom industry, so is the beverage industry, and things of that nature. Otherwise, most of the times organizations choose to differentiate their products when you can easily tell and what their products are when you come to the market, or they do what we call focus niche, so that when you go to the market, you can easily identify the product from other products. And focus niche, the company focuses on a particular group of buyers. either in a particular profession, either in a particular geographical area, and things of that nature. So that is that as far as the strategic alternatives are concerned. I'll repeat for you, when we are looking at strategic alternatives, the choices that organizations can make to pursue after knowing their strengths and weaknesses, after knowing the organizational capabilities, what they can and what they can't, top management chooses to choose from the variety of alternatives available. I told you that most of the companies choose from growth strategies or from defensive strategies given the various situations at hand. And that is that as far as the strategic choices are concerned.